On commentary, my name is Grimelius, and I'm joined by my good friend Shed. What's up, dude?
Yo, Grim, how are you doing today?
Oh, I am just fine. Do you want to introduce the race for us?
Sure. We have for you right now a race between Fant and RainbowPoogle.
That is right. That match out of the Gumo's hideout group. This is our second match in that tournament. Poogle's already played one. This is Fant's first match out of the tournament. And to quickly introduce the runners, I'm going to start by introducing Fant, and then we're going to toss back over to Shed to introduce Poogle. So for Fant is someone who's been a part of the Ori community for quite some time. He's a hybrid runner. He's heavily involved as I don't know if the term is volunteer, but basically a staff member almost for the Games Done Quick events. He's an interview producer for them. Fant, the biggest thing to know going into this race is that despite Fant being around for a long time, he's been pretty out of practice for quite some time, and unfortunately hasn't had a ton of time to get back into things and de-rust. So even though Fant's PB is pretty significantly faster than Rainbow's, it'll be interesting to see how that rust plays into things.
Yeah, on the other hand, we have RainbowPoogle as a fairly newer runner. Within the last month, has started learning this category and the game in general, but is therefore in practice as opposed to Fant. So this could end up being a very interesting race. Absolutely.
We're certainly going to have some interesting additional things. We're sort of keeping some secrets in our back pockets here for some commentary tricks later on. I do want to point out that on screen you see that RainbowPoogle's listed PB is a 47.37. That is actually not accurate anymore. One interesting thing about running these kinds of tournaments is that, unsurprisingly, people practice and they get better as the tournament continues. So Rainbow actually PB'd in her first race against Cheeselover, getting a 44.42. So Fant still does have a better PB by about 5.5 minutes, but it's not quite as bad as the stats showed. And we're going to be getting kicked off right about now.
Yeah, this definitely has the potential to be a close one here, so stay tuned.
Absolutely. Shed, I don't really want to ask you what's going to happen in the early game. We know what's going to happen in the early game. We're going to get up slowly, wait for some dialogue that we have disabled due to hiding our user interface. We're going to run off to the left, do some jumping and some vaulting, and sort of have a nice, relaxing afternoon stroll through the forest.
Yep, we're going to go pick up our buddy Sign. Have him shoot some frogs for us. Whatever, it's fine.
It's kind of nice. This early game, you don't have very many skills. You can only run and jump, which kind of means that it's really hard to mess anything up. As I say that, I may curse someone, although it is seriously very, very hard. You just run to the left, you grab one energy cell, you dodge the rhino. You don't even need to dodge the rhino if you want to, because he only does 2 damage, and your health gets refilled with Sign up here.
It's like simultaneously relaxing because it's so simple, but then also stressful because if you mess anything up, you're just like, why did I do that?
Right. I'd say that's kind of true, not only in this first section up to Sign, but in the entire section up to wall jump, the first roughly 3.5 minutes of the run.
Yeah, absolutely. You like beat yourself up for the tiniest of mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that's interesting, we've talked a lot in this tournament so far about the differences between keyboard mouse players and controller players. Those differences are actually quite a bit less prevalent in this run because Poogle is a controller-only runner on the right side, and Fant on the left uses some keyboard mouse, but he's a hybrid runner as well, so he plays most of the game on controller. Which means that I actually kind of saw Rainbow during that Frankie fight going for, it didn't look like scroll wheel shooting, but it was just sort of mashing shots. And I'll sort of be paying attention to see what shot strategies both of these runners use as the match continues.
Yeah, you usually see controller runners opt for the pacing shots, but sometimes mashing is just more comfortable.
Right. You know what else is fun about the early game of Ori, Shed? Is that when you're on stats, you have to pay really close attention to the little radio buttons that toggle between first and second. Like, Poogle was maybe like a hair ahead, and then Poogle accidentally just clipped one of the edges and let Fant take the lead. Fant right now doing his Ghost Roar with 2 health, and it looks like Poogle was also at 2 health. Thankfully, the fish helped take her out even more quickly. So Fant still with just like a 2nd or 2 lead here. Really not much to speak of at this point. Well,
here,
I take it back.
We're already going to see. Poogle has an interesting strategy where she does not take the 4th health cell that is a typical backup for most runners, especially newer ones.
Now this is very interesting, and it's indicative of a sort of a larger quality about RainbowPoogle that we are sort of going to jump into right now. Poogle's PB is a 44-42, which, as far as all Ori runners go, is relatively low. It's not bad or anything; it's just it's a relatively slow PB. But RainbowPoogle generally goes for strats that you could describe as past kind of what should be her experience level, if that makes sense. Given that PB, you would expect Poogle to go for a lot of sort of baby strats, and she's not. You could see Poogle not only is going for 3 health, which is going to give an early lead over Fant, but also dodged the experience flower on the way down, which is a pretty precise little trick that saves just a hair of time, you know?
Yeah, Poogle's been impressive as well with going for these quote unquote big boy strats and actually getting a lot of them too. So we'll definitely have to see how she does in this one.
The scary thing about big boy strats for newer or older runners is that they can save you a lot of time and they can lose you a lot of time. It's risk.
They lose you way more if you miss them.
Right. It's the sort of thing where, I mean, maybe when Poogle PBs again, she'll get like a 5 or 6 minute PB, you know, something massive. Because clearly she has the skill and the experience and the attitude to be able to pull off some of these tricks. It's just a matter of, I guess, the experience. Poogle actually did not level up. Well, there goes the level up. Did not level up immediately off the flower, which is going to lose Poogle just a handful of seconds. Rainbow did have an early 8-second lead due to skipping the early health cell.
But remember that Poogle... Yeah, it's almost a false lead, though, because Poogle has 3 health, will need to get up to 5 or 6, depending on how safe she wants to be, for the end of the game. So she'll need to grab a later health cell that Fant will not. So this lead, the 8 seconds that she gained here will be made up a little bit later on.
Right. I like to think of it as an investment. You invest the initial 8 seconds to get the 4th health cell, and in return, you get a lot of safety. And since, unless you do an older route that cleans the water, which is slower anyway, you need at least 5 health. I know that Poogle is going to be going for 6, and Fant is also going to be going for 6. So like you said, it does save Poogle time now, but it loses additional time later. Poogle, by her own admission, just sort of really dislikes that Glade's health cell. I don't really know why, to be honest.
It is also technically faster because later on the health cells that you can grab to make up for it are faster to grab than that one. But yeah, as you said, the early game safety is most runners like it, but Poogle does not. Poogle's saying,
"Oh no,
oh no, that's huge. That's a gigantic death from Fant from the start of Blackroot, and honestly, the next save that he was going to make all the way back to the wall jump tree."
On the other hand, Poogle is actually having to watch the entrance cutscene to BRB. So for anyone who may be watching this tournament and hasn't played the game a lot yourself, Fant pausing for a moment to check his XP. This is a cutscene. I don't know that we've seen it so far in this tournament.
Yeah, I don't know if we've watched this one yet.
Well, it's something that can just be sort of unfortunate. Many of these cutscene skips might not look very difficult and might not look like much, and they aren't that difficult. You know, they're not difficult on the level of like a Sarabash or something, but that doesn't mean that you don't need to be able to do your save anywhere movement accurately, and the smallest little mistakes can really cost you like that.
What I suspect happened, I didn't actually catch it myself. Ooh, a death.
Wow.
What?
Wow. That's huge.
Okay, I was suspecting that Poogle didn't like leveled the ability early to, but it looks like she didn't even save at all, and a death in Blackroot sends her all the way back to the wall jump tree. That's just...
Yeah, I mean, and it's caused, as you said, because remember, for anyone, just as a quick recap, that Save Anywhere is a trick that allows you to move around in the background with your ability menu open. And the reason that you do that is that it allows you to spend an ability point anywhere you want, and spending an ability in Ori saves the game immediately wherever you're at. That's why we call the trick Save Anywhere, because it allows you to save anywhere on the ground, in danger zones, including in midair.
And in cutscenes, which is important.
And in cutscenes, but because I keep saying RainbowPoogle, just Poogle, because she missed that cutscene skip, it also didn't save her game. And Blackroot Burrows, as we've talked about ad nauseum, is a super spooky area that's very, very dangerous, has a lot of ways to kill you very quickly. Remember, Poogle's also at 3 health, so it was just sort of a recipe for disaster there.
Yeah, those spikes there, well, those spikes there that she died on deal 3 damage, so of course she died instantly. But even if you have 4 health, it's difficult to climb out of the pit if you do get hit, so even if she had 4, I suspect her mistake would have killed her there anyway. But regardless, Fant is now in the lead. Takes a death to the same spikes himself, but had a safety save on the orb side of the pit here.
What a value safety save. It's not uncommon to see a safety save in this area from any runners. Those jumps are just so scary.
That particular spot is unusual, though. Lucky he had it.
It is. It's more common to save on the right side, but it's Well, I'm very glad that Fant did save. Without that save, Fant would have gone back, not to the wall jump tree, not as far back as he went before, but would have gone back to the start of Black Group Burrows.
Meanwhile, he's got some insta-kill lasers to deal with here on the right side. Poogle trying to see if she can beat the spike pit this time instead.
That's right. I do want to point out that even though Fant on the left has a nice early lead, and by the way, I don't know if we said this explicitly, Fant is watching Poogle, which means that Fant knows that he's currently in the lead. Poogle, in contrast, is not watching either the restream or Fant directly, although I have to imagine that after a death like that, Poogle probably assumes that she's in second place.
Yeah, I don't know if you could... So Fant took a death as well, so she is not as far behind as perhaps she thinks. We'll have to see if that affects her mindset at all, and if, by extension, that affects her run.
Well, Poogle made it through those insta-kill lasers very quickly, and what Poogle's doing now is a quick exit and reload to manipulate the cycles in BRB and save. Not much time, maybe a second or two, but that's an example of an advanced strategy that Poogle is going for, despite, on paper, her being quite a newer runner. She's really going for a lot of these strats that even I don't go for.
Yeah, we mentioned it before, and it's kind of impressive to see that she even goes for them and then succeeds most of the time.
I agree. Well, Fant on the left is still in the lead. He was able to make it through his rooms without too much trouble, and more importantly, without dying to the insta-kill lasers. You have to do sort of a tricky jump up to that lever, but well done by Fant. He's going to use a save anywhere to skip the darkness cutscene. That's a cutscene that for a long time we thought was not unskippable, but we thought that you couldn't really skip it in a way that was useful. Turns out that you can, and that's going to allow Fant to get over to Dash.
I frequently say Bash is the best ability, but that's actually not true. Dash is the best. Dash is the entire reason that this run is so incredibly fast.
Well, it's not only Dash, it's Dash and what it unlocks, like Charge Dash, for example, and by extension, rocket jumps and stomp cancels and all kinds of really joyous things. Stuff.
And if you in other categories of the game that allow out of bounds, Dash unlocks a lot of those as well, though we won't be seeing any of these in this.
No. Well, keep your eyes peeled on the left side. Fant is in the lead right now, going through Frankie Walk. But just like in the early game, you can take some rough deaths that bring you back pretty far, like all the way to wall jump. In this area that Fant's in now, if he takes a death either in this area or in the death gauntlet, assuming that he doesn't get a 10% drop out of an energy cell or an energy shard, whatever you want to call it, Fant, if he takes a death, could get sent all the way back to the dash tree. I hope that he doesn't happen.
He's through the Frankie Walk, but it's not over yet. Death, as we just mentioned, Death Gauntlet, very scary, taking some forced damage here. Up past the Frankie.
There are multiple ways to get past that Frankie, and it's really scary every single time. Fant is
going for Death Glide.
Oh, God!
Oh, God! No! Get out of... Oh, no! Fant. Too much damage all the way back to the dash tree. Has to do Frankie Walk again, and Poogle's now in the lead.
That's exactly what I was talking about, and it's what can happen in the early game of Ori. In my opinion, and Shed, I guess you can tell me whether you agree or disagree with this statement, I'm way more scared of the early game than I am in the late game.
Oh, absolutely. Late game, your movement, like, you have the ability to save yourself just so much easier than you do in the early game.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Poogle missed her Frankie Walk, was able to successfully kill the Frankie and level up, but dashed off the platform. I wonder if that's just a bit of a stray input. But Poogle got sent all the way back to the dash tree as well, so Fant is in the lead again.
Yeah, we got another lead switch. To the same thing, no less. Poogle taking a safety save here, so that just in case the Frankie Walk fails again, she doesn't have to go back to the dash tree, just back to the teleporter.
Man, I can't wait for both of these guys to get through to Moon Grotto. Generally, the sort of a rough rule of thumb I can tell you that I have for myself is that it's sort of okay to reset runs until you get to double jump. Of course, in a race, you won't reset your run regardless, but just getting past all of these initial really mean tricks. Fant did get his Death Glide, by the way. Getting past all these initial tricks is just such a relief, and getting down into Moon Grotto is sort of a good marker, and especially getting to double jump that you've made it past the first really rough leg of your journey.
Yeah, this split's just brutal in general. You've got you've got a bunch of tricks in a row. You got Frankie Walk, you got Death Glide if you go for that. Death Gauntlet is dangerous. You got the God Cycle that Fant does not go for. That's fine. Coming up, you've got some dangerous spikes on the way down to double jump. It's just brutal.
It really is brutal. Speaking of brutal, Poogle on the right has made her way past the Frankie Walk door, also activated the Rainbow Dash. That's kind of neat. Deciding to not go for a Death Glide, which Fant did, and instead just going to go up. Fant did take a death, by the way. So he's back to the start of Moon Grotto, which means that Poogle is suddenly not far behind Fant at all, especially if Poogle can get the God cycle, this early Crushy cycle. Then that could let her catch up even more time.
Yeah, it's one of those advanced strats that we mentioned Poogle likes to go for. See if she does. Lining it up. Quick pause. And not quite.
The movement there is exceedingly precise, and there's an energy crystal in your way that tends to just block it. You have to do your movement very precisely to ramp off of that energy crystal correctly.
And on top of that, being precise, it's like if you do it almost but not quite, there's one frame of that trick that will kill you instead. So it's just double dangerous.
Only about an 11-second delta between these two as Fant makes his way over to double jump Poogle, not too far behind. This match may end up to be a little bit of a war of attrition. It seems like we've had a bunch of lead changes. We've had all of these little deaths, some deaths not so little, that have caused the lead to just flip-flop back and forth.
Yeah, fortunately, the major deaths seem to be happening on both sides, so the deficit isn't too large because of that, but just a blind movement between these two right now.
Always an interesting day when you have to make statements like, it's lucky that there were deaths on both sides. But I know what you mean, though. I mean, in the interest of having a close race, it's nice to see. Of course, each runner individually, you always want your opponent to do really, really well, but just a little bit less well than you. It's like, I want you to have like a God run that's 1 second slower than me. That's the dream, I think.
That is absolutely the dream.
Nice job by Fant, by the way. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh,
nice
yeah.
Job by Fant on Grotto Skip.
I assume it was a first try, depending on how fast, because of how fast he's through that.
Well, he's through it. That's the important thing. I believe it was first try as well. Hopefully, I'm not giving everyone misinformation there. So Fant's still with the lead. We're seeing Poogle come up on her attempt at Grotto Skip as well.
Not getting a sticking point for newer runners.
It is. It's a jump. Grotto Skip is a jump that if you get it quickly, it looks like absolutely nothing. You think, okay, so they just did a wall jump. Who cares? I've done literally dozens of wall jumps, but there it is.
No, not quite.
I lied. All right, Shad, I'm going to quiet down. You can commentate the rest of this. Every time you speak, someone misses something.
Man, I feel like this. There it is, finally. Ori is filled with that kind of trick, though, where you it looks like almost nothing if you get it first try.
That's true. I suppose that can be said of many runs. Fant on the left still has a lead, and that lead widened because of the issues that Poogle had with her Grotto Skip. Fant made a pit stop by the Grotto Spirit Well, as always, is going to damage boost through this slime, and Fant's making his way to the Ginso tree, while Poogle successfully did a cutscene skip to prevent boulders from spawning, having just a hair of trouble getting up to this orb, but there she goes, and is going to do another cutscene skip. As always, moving back through this area, you see many cutscenes play out of order, just due to the fact that we are cheating speedruns and we sequence broke the heck out of everything. But like we said, there have been some rough, pretty costly deaths so far in this race, but they've been on both sides. So overall, this is still anybody's run.
This split as well, I like to mention, is we said the last split was brutal because of all the tricks you have to do right in a row. This split is equally brutal, but for an entirely different reason. There's almost no tricks, and the runners probably won't die, except for the fact that there's just so much movement. The walls in this area can be kind of finicky sometimes, and you just have to be... You can lose seconds without even realizing it just on movement alone.
That's right. Well, I mean, Ori is a game where you just have to basically memorize every single wall jump, every single dash, and you know I'm going to do 3 wall jumps on this wall, and then a single dash followed by a dash glide, and then a longer dash glide and a shorter dash glide. It's a game that takes a lot of practice and experience, and I want to reiterate something that we mentioned when we were introducing the runners, which is that Fant, by his own admission, is very, very out of practice, and Poogle, by her own admission, despite being not rusty, is just sort of feeling a little bit nervous and a little bit not confident with many of these tricks. And so I guess I'd be curious, especially on Fant's end, to know how much nerves may or may not be playing into this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because these tricks are definitely hard enough that even the slightest amount of nerves the slightest twitch can screw with you.
That's right. Fant in his second room of the Ginso tree on the left side is deciding to take it slowly for just a moment, waiting for the gamers to waddle around their little platforms. It's faster to wait for one of the cycles and to fall back down and die in the spikes. So Fant still does have a lead, but Poogle right on his tail. Excuse me.
Poogle is definitely within striking distance. Yeah, all it takes is a mistake or two from Fant, and some clean running from Poogle, and we're right back in it.
How do you think Poogle might be feeling right now, especially knowing that she's playing in the dark? Is not watching the restream or Fant.
You know, it's hard to say. She probably thinks she's behind. I would not, because of the deaths and the failed Frankie walk and all that, I would not doubt that she thinks she's behind. But it was true earlier, and it's still true now. I don't think she realizes how close she actually is.
Yeah, it's another interesting thing. I always find it interesting to look at the mental aspect of games like this, both in terms of nerves and rust, but also many people find it very distracting to look at your splits or to watch the other runner. Many people decide that it can be very helpful to know whether you're ahead or behind. It's hard to say objectively which one is better or worse, but I guess Fant does have the advantage of information, and so that may, depending on circumstances, allow him to take some safety strats that otherwise he might be very nervous to take, fearing the loss of time.
Right. It's all personal preference, really. If you want to watch your opponent, feel like you're actually in a race with them, maybe change up your strats depending on how far behind you are or not, versus not looking at any of that, no distractions, just focusing on clean movement, doing what you practiced.
Speaking of clean movement, Fant, after the mini boss, got an 8-cycle mini boss, which is a hair slow, but is totally reasonable. There is some RNG in that fight after all. Seemed to move pretty cleanly through these next handful of rooms, and is making his way over to Bash, whereas Poogle is just sort of continuing through as well.
Yep, we're just climbing the Ginso tree, or the Gajinso tree, if you will.
Did you just say Gajinso tree?
I may have.
You know what? I like it. Get around the whole debate. We've explained many of these tricks many times. To give a quick recap, Fant is using his newly acquired Bash skill to move through a handful of puzzle rooms, and then he's going to use that same skill to do an interesting trick known as a key duplication, which is a key to leave this area with 3 additional keystones that we glitched the game into duplicating for us. And as you might expect, the reason that we're duplicating those keystones is that even though it costs time now, it saves you a lot more time later. And because the poison water is still going to remain, you actually cannot get the keystones that you would ordinarily get in an intended playthrough.
Right. Even if we could get them, it's fast. These keystones, of course, can be used on any door in the game, not just the one they're supposed to be. And it ends up being faster to duplicate here than to get them, even if we could. But like you mentioned, we can't.
Fant did get a successful key dupe. It was a hair slow. If you play your cards right, you can sort of fall directly into the spikes and in a position close enough to the door to duplicate the keys. There's a death by Fant. I hope he rekindled that save. I assume that he did.
I hope so as well, because if he didn't rekindle, then he lost his duplication, has to do that again.
Oh no! Poogle took a death. Good safety save after the mini boss. Good awareness to make that safety save.
Yeah, that's a nice one to have.
When you enter the first mini boss, the game does autosave, and so the game does not save afterwards though. And many runners, Poogle included, and myself included, do take that save after the mini boss room. But it's really nice that she doesn't have to do that mini boss again, especially given how RNG can slow it down.
There's some advanced sort of stuff you can do with that save in particular, since these runners have an ability on the ability tree called Rekindle. Taking a save heals you, but optimally you want to be at 3 health for the ghost door to set it up correctly. So you can actually use that save, whether taking it or not, to set up your health. But of course, if you don't take it, it's unsafe. Poogle has 3 health naturally anyway, so the save basically doesn't do anything in that respect. So smart on her to take it.
That's right. I hesitate to say where to direct your attention. There's some exciting stuff happening on both sides. Fant is still in the lead on the left side and is going to be making his way out of the Ginso tree. Remember that we skipped the Ginso escape in this newer route, grabbing some experience along the way, and then is going to head into his swamp entry. I don't know whether Fant is going to decide to skip this cutscene and by extension prevent the lasers from spawning. Looks like he is. But as a result, Fant is going to have to do a little bit of blind movement, which can be kind of trickier than I think the other blind movements.
Yeah, a lot of runners do not like this blind movement and opt to take a 1-second time loss to just not skip this cutscene and do it not blind. But Fant does it blind, makes it all the way over to the frog, places a safety save before setting up his swamp entry. Good thing he did, too, because he failed it once already.
Yeah, very common safety save to see there because this trick is pretty difficult. The frog does not know how to swim. Didn't take swimming lessons as a child. Little child, baby tadpole frog.
That was a little sketchy, but he makes it. Oh no, the spikes. Gotta try again. Oh no, the bash bug. That's always unfortunate to see.
Can you, Shed, while Fant is taking his attempt at this, can you quickly describe trash bashing? I don't think we've talked about it much in the tournament.
Sure. So, well, a trash bash is a phenomenon that happens on controller. If the runner is using the Poogle taking a quick death, but that doesn't matter because the game autosaves after that boss fight anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, so trash bash is if the runner is using a joystick to bash, sometimes it'll snap back and press the other direction, which causes your bash to go wildly off into the sunset. Who knows where? Fant makes it through the swamp entry very clean after a couple of failed attempts, but once he got the frog over there, it was no problem.
Swamp entry is certainly one of the most difficult tricks in the run. It's also one of the newest tricks, and since Fant is rusty, I guess comparatively to everything else in the run, Fant has probably had less overall practice on swamp entry than something like Sorrow Bash.
That's true.
I want to point out something else that's interesting as Fant, still in the lead on the left side, is approaching his stomp tree. We did get word from our stats guys, actually from our restreamer, thank you, Meldon, that with that death after the second mini-boss, as you said, after the second mini-boss, the game does autosave. So Poogle didn't lose a lot of time, but Poogle did lose 30 experience from the mini-boss. So we'll see how that plays into things later.
An interesting note there is that it does actually not look like Poogle has Magnet, which would normally let you grab that 30. So it's entirely possible that she expects not to get it anyway, and it might not affect her run at all.
I guess we'll find out. Well, Poogle on the right side is taking her attempts at Swamp Entry. Already failed it once by having the frog take an unfortunate dip in the poison water. Looks like Poogle is also going for a double bash method. Poogle's playing on controller, and double bashes are notoriously difficult on controller because you have to release and press the same button in 1/60th of a second. That's not easy to do.
You also know, however, that Poogle has frustrations with the non-double bash setup for this trick, which is kind of, oh, then there she finally gets it. But nice job. So she sometimes, if she gets especially nervous or frustrated, opts for the double bash setup for it.
That's right. Left side, if you pay attention real quick, Fant did get through his current cutscene skip, took a little bounce on the trampoline and another trampoline, having a bit of a trampoline party. But getting through the cutscene skip is important. How long is that cutscene again, Shed?
17 seconds.
17 seconds is a long time to lose in a speedrun, especially when you're in the lead. And remember, Fant knows that he's in the lead. And especially with Rust and some nerves, I think Fant is going to be, very pleased to keep any lead that he can. You even saw him make a safety save after the 5th energy cell. I actually really like that decision of making...
It is a good one.
Right, well, especially because...
It unfortunately loses you time since you'd normally use that save to skip the cutscene we just saw Fant watch, but it's a good safety save to make since leaving that area is particularly difficult, especially with the insta-kill spikes that are directly below it.
Well, and the cutscene that he wasn't able to skip is super short.
All right,
so it's not that big a deal.
Almost as long as the reload would take anyway.
Right.
Fant has made it all the way to Charge Flame now.
He has. I also just wanted to point out that we talk a lot about experience routing and management in this run. We talk a little bit less about energy management. And it can especially be sort of not visible since most players spend most of the run with their user interface off, which means that at any given time, you can't see how much health or energy they have. But many times energy is sort of as precisely routed as the experience. You're trying to use your energy to make saves in specific locations. And if you're not making saves, you're using that energy for tricks, right? Specifically, usually charge dashes.
And rocket jumps, of course.
Yes, those two. And so it's always a choice by some newer runners to decide where they want to use that energy for additional safety as opposed to additional speed. And that's especially true in later areas like Misty Woods.
Very true. Unfortunately, we saw Poogle attempt the Kuro cutscene skip. I know she just said that she usually doesn't go for it, but has decided to in this race without much practice. Fails it, unfortunately, says hello to the big bird.
It's a very, very precise skip, as opposed to... There's a lot of cutscenes that we skip in this speedrun. That is, without a doubt, the most difficult.
Oh, this is interesting. Poogle normally goes up and grabs an extra health cell there, but having some trouble getting up there, decides to just straight up skip it instead, and now only has 3 HP?
That's going to have some heavy implications later in the run.
No!
Oh,
but
goodness.
she had the same safety save Fant did, so that death will not take so much time. Yeah, the 3 HP will be could be interesting in Misty in particular once we get there.
Yeah, we'll talk about more of that health. Fant is well into... Oh, actually, I was about to misspeak. I was going to say that Fant is into his fast stompless attempts, but Fant actually messaged us before the race with some information, and among other things, said that he's not going to go for fast stompless because
Right.
Fant is, as we said, a little bit rusty. He just hasn't had a lot of time in his busy schedule to play Ori. And so he's sort of decided to use the small amount of time that he has to do some ILs and just sort of generally get used to the game again, rather than grinding out these particularly difficult tricks.
Right. Fast stompless, of course, trick that saves some time. I believe it's about 15 seconds, but missing it even once can lose you quite a lot of time.
Right. And Fant also knows that he's in the lead, so I don't think that Fant would have gone for fast stompless anyway, but he knows that he can beat that time.
Super safe. No time loss.
Yeah, well, Fant is still has a very, very nice lead. Poogle is using a save anywhere to skip through the Spirit Tree cutscene, and meanwhile, things are about to get very crazy for Fant. There are many tricks that you can decide to go for. Like you can decide to go for fast stompless or skip it. You can decide to do certain tricks faster or slower, but there's really no getting around Sarabash, and that's what Fant is about to do.
Sarabash allowing us, of course, to skip an entire dungeon in Forlorn Ruins. Had a bit of a weak rocket jump from Fant there. Unfortunately, didn't make it all the way back up to the top of Valley, so he's opting to reload, give it another shot.
I do want to point out specifically on this topic of the rocket jump, Fant does manual rocket jumps, whereas most runners use rebinds.
That's a good point, yes. Oh no, goodbye, Frog. See you later.
Is that a bash bug, by the way?
I didn't catch it myself.
It may have been a bit of a bash bug. There's a rare bug in this game where sometimes your bash just does absolutely nothing, and it looked like that may have been what happened on the frog. Thankfully, it's not too much of a time loss for Fant, who's able to just reload his save and grab another frog. This time, did make it up. He's going to be making a safety save and refilling his energy before taking attempts at Sarabash.
I was just going to say, that's an intentional death. He dealt quite a lot of damage to these birds that you need for Sarabash, and you need them to be healthy, so he took an intentional death to reset their health.
That's right, and on the right side we have two very cool tricks. On the left side we have Fant going for his Sarabash attempts, and on the right side we have Poogle going for fast stompless, which is a trick that Fant decided not to do. So we will see how this goes. As always, it's a very precise shot.
Unfortunately, Poogle misses the shot, but she did get the cell, opting to die and try again. It looks like.
Looks like it.
She looks like she's not actually trying fast stompless again. I don't know why she opted for the death there, but who knows?
Well, we'll talk about that in a moment. I do want to point out that Fant was able to get a nice second try Sarabash, so he's into Sarabash just really with a nice lead. Looks like Poogle is deciding to just go stomp the rocks, same as Fant. So that's going to actually lose Poogle even more time, because not only did she miss her fast stompless, but is now doing the same trick that Fant just decided to do first time, excuse me.
Right, like we were saying, fast stompless saves a lot of time, but also loses a lot of time. And Poogle likes to go for these more advanced tricks, but as a newer runner, sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Fant did take a death on the left side. He did make a safety save after Sarabash, which is very, very nice. Many runners might not do that, and you would lose a lot more time. But Fant has to take this frog and do another rocket jump up and make it through those super scary spikes in an area that we like to jokingly call the Dorito Dungeon or the Noob Spikes. But there's really nothing newbie about them. They all deal 4 damage.
They're scary.
They are.
Doritos are pointy, man.
They're very, very pointy.
Have you ever tried to eat a Dorito whole? It just stabs you.
Yeah, they deal 4 damage. Last I checked. I don't know where I was going with that. Anyway,
Fant starting a especially long save anywhere here is going to be doing some movement, including grabbing the charge jump tree behind a dark screen here, setting up for a trick known as Terror Break.
Right. The interesting thing about Terror Break, one of the interesting things, is that you can decide to open up the save anywhere sooner or later by Fant opening up. Good save by Poogle on the right side, by the way. I'm going to interrupt my own thought. The nice thing about opening up the save anywhere early like Fant did is that he doesn't have to waste time on the way out. He can actually do a bash off that frog and just continue floating to the right rather than having to stop and try to dodge the frog shots while opening up the save anywhere. It also, well, it doesn't actually save you energy because you could use a rekindled save for the ghost door anyway.
Right.
Anyway, making it through, made his save up near the spikes, took a death after buffering up a charge jump, and is going to float up towards the Sunstone. And Poogle on the right then has also made it into Sorrow Pass, but with a first try Sarabash as opposed to Fant's second. So Poogle showing off that despite being in second place, she really has a lot of attitude and really has a capability to pull off these advanced maneuvers.
Had an unfortunate situation there with Poogle where you rocket jump underneath this frog here to try and get his shot to reach the ceiling. Oh no.
Do you see what I'm seeing?
I see what you're seeing on the
What
left
am I
here.
seeing? What am I seeing?
Fant unfortunately is unable to skip the particularly long cutscene that plays here at the top when you pick up the Sunstone. He canceled his SA or leveled up an ability or something and is unable to skip it. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for lore.
There is lore. More importantly, there is time loss. This is a pretty lengthy cutscene, and I don't know exactly how long it is offhand, nor exactly how much time it takes to get from charge jump up here. But
I'm pretty sure this will give Poogle a chance to catch all the way back up.
If this isn't going to put Poogle in the lead, it's at least going to let her get very, very close. This race just became a lot more interesting.
I'm on the edge of my seat now. I was thinking a little bit that Fant might have run away with it for a bit there, but sorry, it's looking close now.
It is. Looks like Poogle, whereas Fant decided to open up his save anywhere early and just sort of float all the way through, Poogle is deciding to float back through while being able to see what she's doing. Unsurprisingly, it's nice to be able to see your character when you're floating through insta-kill spikes. Poogle's going to open up a save anywhere out of the save that she made prior to going through the Dorito Caves, or the noob spikes, is going to make the save right up near the top, just like Fant's. The barricade is broken. Wait for lasers so that you don't get scorched. And up you go. So it was not enough to give Poogle the lead, but I mean, we're about to head into Misty Woods.
Quick high five here from the runners. Fant heading down this shaft, Poogle heading up it. But yeah, that was a huge chunk of this deficit gone.
That's right. So Fant on the left is still in the lead, and he's making his way out of the bird. The bird. Okay. Making his way out of those spikes. The spikes on the bottom will insta-kill you just as much as the ones on the top, with a nice safety save at the bottom, making his way into Misty Woods. Now, one thing that, Shed, you've already mentioned a little bit, but Misty Woods is an area that's arguably not quite as dangerous as Sorrow Pass, only because the spikes deal 3 damage rather than 4, but Poogle still only has 3 health, right? Because she skipped the spider one?
Right, I believe so. So that means that Fant here with his 4 HP is able to take 2 hits before he dies. So he gets a free hit off of any of these spikes, whereas Poogle gets none. One hit is done and done.
It's not like Fant, is incredibly safe. He can survive 1 hit from the spikes, but if he does, he's still, cannon fodder for a lot of other things.
There are a lot of spikes in here.
Yeah, I have to say that despite Fant's rust, he's playing pretty cleanly. There were some early deaths on both sides, but Fant's had some pretty clean play since.
Yeah, it's been pretty good. Perhaps he shook off his nerves or something. Who knows?
It probably helps that he's watching the stream and knows that despite some of the mistakes, he's currently in the lead, although he's not out of the woods yet. Fant is approaching climb, and even after getting the climb, we're only about halfway through the maze-like labyrinthine Misty Woods.
Poogle taking a death. Fortunately, had a save at the start of Misty here. Like we said, these hazards deal 3.
Well, Fant made it to climb, which is good. Fant is going to get to sort of use almost all of his abilities. Fant currently has 10 out of 11 skills, and the only one he doesn't have is Light Grenade, which is going to be the next target. But the only way to get out of Misty Woods is to continue through it and basically beat the whole area. Fant there tried to do a rocket jump off of the frog, but accidentally got the frog a little bit out of position, so just sort of had to climb up sort of the more manual way, and is deciding to make a safety save. I wouldn't be too surprised if we saw a handful of safety saves throughout this area.
Screwing up some movement there, taking a hit, opting to just die, and so he has 2 hits for this whole section instead of just 1. Pretty smart there, especially since the safety save was right there. Barely any time lost.
Well, and that's kind of what we talked about. Poogle will die from 1 hit, but Fant will still die from 2, so he still does have to play well.
Right. Poogle had an interesting safety save there that she made at a specific spot in Misty that she crosses back to again, so gets the save on it twice.
That's just efficient energy usage right there.
Yeah, and she has made it to climb, so we'll be starting the back half of Misty herself. Fant has gotten the 4th keystone that allows you to leave the area. We'll be heading up to the mini boss, using some fancy rocket jumps in tight, spiky corridors.
That's right. So I'm sort of thinking about the outcome of this race. Fant is still in the lead, and he's maintained this lead for pretty much the whole time, but not by a huge amount. I mean, Poogle made it to climb, take a death, unfortunately, but it's still a climb. And Fant is about to beat his second mini boss and then pretty shortly make his way out of Misty Woods. So we're about half of an area apart right now, roughly.
Yeah, it's getting more and more difficult as the race goes on for Poogle to catch up, but it's still technically possible. Who knows? Fant could watch another cutscene.
He could. I hope that we don't see it.
I hope we don't.
The cutscenes in this game are very pretty. They're also very, very slow.
And sad.
And sad. Very, very sad. But Fant has made his way through the double mini bosses, is now doing a bunch of charge dashes and some bash glides and some dash glides and all kinds of fun ore tricks to make his way out. Fant is going to be heading back to Blackroot Burrows for revisits. That's an area that we were in earlier in the run. Oh, tried to do a stop cancel.
Don't fall down.
Good,
nice
good
recovery.
Save, yeah. Even if you do fall down there, it is savable by doing a rocket jump off of a frog, but it just burns an energy and it takes a little bit more time.
Something to note here, Fant did take a hit on the way out after leveling at the mini-boss, which refilled his health, so he is currently at 1 HP heading into Blackroot. Shouldn't matter too much since your second visit to Blackroot is significantly safer than the first one, but good to note.
It is good to know. It's also kind of nice because one of the first things that you do on this revisit is take an intentional death.
Poogle having some trouble, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Fant is still just playing pretty cleanly. Like Poogle has had some slop and some some issues, which I think are understandable given that she's really been going for some pretty advanced strategies.
Oh no.
She did make a safety save. That's a very valuable safety save. Poogle could have been sent all the way back to climb in the worst case scenario and decided to make some safety saves instead.
Those are spikes, Poogle. You don't want to charge jump directly into them.
With every single death that save that she made is gaining value, although unfortunately that she is taking the deaths. Fant, meanwhile, is just sort of continuing through. He just skipped the second cutscene, so your prediction did not come true. We did not see another cutscene.
Good. I don't want to.
That's a particularly long one too. I think that cutscene's longer than the Sunstone one. It's very, very long. It is,
yeah.
But Fant now has every single skill in the game. He only has one more destination, which is Mount Horror, the third and final dungeon. And just like we didn't complete the first dungeon and we skipped the second one entirely, we will not be finishing the third dungeon either. Meanwhile, Poogle decided to take a little bit of some slower strategies for taking out the mini bosses, but did take them out, and most importantly, didn't die. I'd say that's the most important thing in Ori, is just try your best not to die in unintended places.
The hardest trick in Ori, of course, not dying.
That's true for anyone, whether you're experienced or newer. It does seem like maybe the nerves for Fant have diminished, or if he is still nervous, he's not really showing it. Was able to also thankfully avoid a death from that boulder. Deaths from that boulder are not very common either, but the boulder does insta-kill you, and its hitbox can be spooky. It can be a little bit screwy, and so it's always a relief to get out of that. So Fant went back to the Thornfelt teleporter, which is a teleporter that he activated way earlier in the run, way back before the first dungeon, and now has all the skills, all the health and energy. Well, actually, Fant is going to get one more health, I think.
I believe so, yes. You take a 6th health cell here in Horu Fields, opting to stop for some extra energy just to make sure that he can charge dash super fast through this area.
Yeah. There's a 6th health cell. You can finish the final escape sequence with only 5, and some runners decide to do that, but it is quite a bit riskier. You need... Oh, God.
Oh, no, Elemental.
Oh. Fant.
Please.
Oh, my God. My heart can't take this.
This is fine. Everything's on fire.
Everything's on fire. Fant is making it through. Fant is going to be taking his attempts at Doro soon. Poogle looks like took a death on the way to the light grenade tree, and unfortunately not an intended one. There are quite a few intended deaths in this run. Thankfully, Poogle wasn't sent back too far, was just sent back up to the top of this area and is going to work her way back through. I have to wonder how panicked Poogle is feeling, because even though she's not watching the restream, she is probably watching SRL chat and knows that Fant isn't done either.
He knows that Fant is not finished yet.
But he's getting closer with a first try door warp from Fant.
Nice.
That's impressive. That trick is not easy to do, especially if you're nervous.
Of course. Yeah, it's one frame.
Yeah.
It's one frame. If your hands are shaking or anything, it gets even harder. But he did it. First try. Very nice.
Keep your eyes on the left. We're going to give you some sick play-by-play. Fant, there's a giant bird, and he's really angry because you're playing with his favorite toy, a giant ball of light. So Fant's gonna run away and do some charge jumps and some dashes and some charge dashes.
They're of course angry you're trespassing on their hot tub.
You're not allowed to do that, Ori. This Kuro's hot tub. Fant does have to make it through this area. He could take 1 damage and still survive, although is there even anything in the escape that does 1 damage? I think everything does at least 2.
Everything does way too much damage in here, and if you take any damage, then like he could take 1 damage, nothing does that though, so if he takes any damage, he can't swim, but he does the swim successfully, 6 health helping him out there.
Not only did the swim successfully, but Fant did a precise charge jump to prevent Kuro from spawning, and the reason you want to prevent Kuro from spawning is that it gives you as many attempts as you need to do this grenade jump trick. Let's see if Fant can pull it off. It's a 1-frame trick that if you can pull it off, it skips like 2/3 of the final cutscene and saves you quite a bit of time. You can take a number of attempts at this trick and still save time compared to the traditional route. Fant is having some issues though.
It looks like he's just missing the actual grenade jump inputs. Of course, there's 2 parts to this trick. You have to do the grenade jump, which is a 1-frame trick, and also be positioned correctly to not soft lock. It looks like his position is okay. He's just having some trouble with the actual grenade jump. Opting to just keep trying, though. Come on,
Fant, I believe in you. At this point, it might almost be a pride thing.
There it is.
Nice.
Doesn't soft lock either.
You can always tell if there's a soft lock if Ori turns left, so it's always immediately apparent. But Fant did not do that, which means that Fant is going to take the victory. GG to Fant, especially given how nervous I know he was before this race. Good job sort of moving past that and putting on a good performance.
Yeah, all he's got to do, he is done with the game effectively now. All he's got to do is hold right with Naru here, who we actually saw some of this time because of the cutscene. But
turns out there are other characters in the game than Ori.
Yeah.
Who knew? Fant, he's going to have his final time coming up soon. Once he loses control of Naru, we'll wait a moment just to get confirmation from our lovely restreamer Meldon of Fant's final time, and then we're going to see Poogle take her shot at running away from Kuro's toy.
I want to note something in particular, that because of the events of her run, Poogle is currently at 5 health.
That's a fantastic point. So
not only does she have to do the 1-frame input that is Door Warp, get through the escape without taking any damage, she has to do the more difficult swim without a safety health, and then do the grenade jump.
Well, and this is really, really interesting because it isn't even just as simple as you just need to do the swim better. The fish, you cannot just swim through and survive. You have to use bashes to get through. I'm going to interrupt myself and pay attention to Door Warp, then I'll finish. Poogle did not get Door Warp first try. She's going to reload and do this as many times as it takes, because this trick allows you to skip all of Mount Horror. So, I don't know, you'd have to do 100 attempts before it loses you time. Got a 3rd try. Nice. 97 short of 100. To finish my thoughts, it's actually more difficult than just doing the swim better. You need to bash off of 2 fish in the water to be able to get through it quickly enough, and those 2 fish are on a cycle for the whole escape, which means that you need to get through the escape without taking damage, and you need to sort of get into the water, you know, in the right way with the fish in the right positions to get through. And for me, I can tell you that I always do the escape in the same way because I know where the fish will be. Poogle, if she does her escape in the same way, I don't know if the fish are going to be in the right spot. I hope they are.
Took some damage off of a rock. Opts to fall in the lava just to restart, since she knows that you can't do the final escape, or the final water there without having taken a damage. But yeah, it's, as you mentioned, you can get the fish consistent, but Poogle's a newer runner. It's entirely possible that she doesn't have a perfectly consistent final escape yet.
She got sniped by the lava pillar. What's interesting about this final escape and what makes it so dangerous is that there are legitimate insta-kill things like that laser, like the pools of lava, but really effectively everything's insta-kill. Because unless you have 7 health, which Poogle only has 5, and even if she had 6, it wouldn't matter. If you take any damage, you will die in the poison water, which means that the fastest thing to do is to take an intentional death. That's what you saw Poogle do right at the beginning of her first attempt, where she took damage off of a boulder, and she was smart enough to know to just take a death and restart rather than trying to continue. But here we see Poogle coming up to the poison watershed. Those fish look good, though. Those fish look good. Come on.
And yes! She's through. Beautiful.
Okay, but we're not out of the woods yet. Nice job preventing Kuro from spawning. Climbing up a little bit is going to do another charge jump and bash off of these falling
Careful. Sometimes
rocks.
These rocks can snipe you. Setting up.
That's
a soft lock.
It was high.
It was very high positioning on the wall, and unfortunately, she's going to have to do this again.
Well, that is the soft luck that can happen, unfortunately. Not only do you have to do a series of one-frame inputs, you have to throw a grenade and then jump. Throw a grenade and then release your charge jump on the next frame to get a grenade jump, but you have to be positioned correctly or you will soft lock there, which means that you have to just immediately exit and reload and do the whole escape sequence again. That's rough, especially since that was a first try. You know, the inputs are hard. It's always unfortunate to get the inputs and still have to redo it. Well, you know what? It gives us more opportunity to do play-by-play. So Poogle bashing off those lanterns, avoiding the lava pillar that killed her earlier. There's actually 2 ways you can break that barricade there. You can do it, well, there's 3 ways. You can do it using a stomp, but you can't in this run because you'll take too much damage. Or you can break it using charge flame or a charge jump, or I guess 4 ways because she did a wall charge jump. It can be broken in a lot of different ways. Made it through again.
I do. Wow, yeah, made it through the water.
That's impressive.
That's so impressive.
Especially
continuing to do the advanced strats like they're nothing.
I mean, she's not even used to this, so that's not even like an advanced strat that she's practiced.
She still looks high on this wall. I'm unsure if she's aware of the exact positioning required for this.
Well, we'll see. If she is that high, there's a decent likelihood that even if she gets her grenade jump, then she will restart again, or soft lock again and be forced to restart this. We'll see how many attempts that Poogle decides to take at it. Knowing her, because I haven't known Poogle very long, but she seems to have a sort of stubborn attitude, which I think is sort of a good thing when it comes to these runs. But okay, that's it. Deciding to finish it out. Poogle's going to have to hold right for a longer period of time than Fant did, because the whole point of that grenade jump is to skip a whole chunk of the sequence. But Poogle decided to just finish it out. GG to Poogle as well.
Yep. GG. Unfortunate he couldn't ultimately get the grenade jump in the end, but opts to just finish the run.
That is right. So GG to Fant on the left. This is his first match of the tournament and only the second match out of this group. So Fant is able to take the victory. That is going to put Poogle at 0-2 in the group, losing matches against both Cheese Lover and Fant. But that's okay. Poogle still has a chance for redemption in her third match whenever that one is scheduled. And I just have to say again, I mean, absolutely GG to Fant, overcoming his rust and his nerves to put on a good performance. But GG to Poogle as well. I am very impressed at people going for many of these strats, even if it doesn't always pay off the way that you'd hope.
Yeah, I can definitely tell that Poogle is going to improve a lot over the course of this tournament. I'd expect to see big things from her soon. Just got to work on that consistency a little bit.
Well, I think that's true for all of us. So Poogle's going to be going over to the right here, and there we go, finished it out. Fant had a final time of 44:11, and we'll be getting some confirmation on Poogle's final time. So GG to Fant on winning that one. We are going to wrap up here pretty quickly. By the way, Poogle had a final time of 49:56, the legendary sub 50. Good job, Poogle.
Yeah,
we are going to be
GG.
Yep, we are going to be finishing up here because we're running a little bit short on time, and we have another exciting match. Shed, what's the match that's coming up?
Coming up right now, after a quick break for setup, we have Vooligan versus Sonic Buster.
That's right. Vooligan is maybe the most veteran person there is. Vooligan's been with Ori since literally day one. I don't want to introduce Fula. Other people can introduce Fula. I'm stealing commentator spotlight. Okay. Shed, it was fun commentating with you. GG to Fant and Poogle.
Yeah, you as well. GG. That'll do it for us.
Stick around for the next race. Bye.